All right, and we're back taking a look at the second generic mission for SPQR. So this one is called Livestock Raid, and this one's got a little bit of a different focus than the first mission here. So both players have war bands of equal denarii in this battle. One player is nominated to be the attacker, so again, certain things trigger off of who the attacker is. This may be decided randomly, or in a campaign will be the player who made the challenge, or again, if this is used in a tournament, some of that might be modified as well. But basically, there will be an attacker and a defender. And setup, as you can kind of see in the map there. So starting with the defender, defending player places, both players place one animal, so like sheep, cows, horses, whatever, for every unit in the defending warband on the table. They must be placed so that they're at least 3 inches away from one another within the area marked on the map. So that sort of central little strip there. So basically, if you have like some village terrain and stuff like that, that definitely makes for a good table to play this mission. The defending player deploys all his models first in that deployment zone as well, and then the defending player also takes the first phase of the game, so something to consider there. So a lot of times missions where there's like an attacker, kind of like a raid or something like that, they actually get to go first, but here the defender goes first, so definitely worth considering there. So you will get a little bit of time to sort of organize and try to mitigate what the attacker's doing. So, and again, if you look at the map here, the attacker basically it's coming from both of the table edges there. So, depending on what you've got your army set up for, that can definitely put a squeeze on people who aren't necessarily used to playing a defender in this kind of a mission. So, just having to deal with enemy forces coming in from 2 different sides can be pretty stressful. So. So it definitely doesn't look all bad for the defender in this particular mission. Special rules, and there's quite a few for this one. So an attacking unit can capture an animal by moving into contact with it and performing a special action. The animal will stay in the possession of that unit until all models in the unit are removed as casualties or it fails a will to fight check. A unit can capture 1 animal for every 5 models in the unit, minimum of 1, but it must perform a special action to capture each one. If the unit sustains casualties that take it below 5 models per animal, it relinquishes control of the extra animals. Animals can't be harmed in any way. If they're abandoned on the battlefields, and if you don't have enough models to recapture them, basically they just stay where they were until someone else captures them. The attacker is permitted to move a unit off any table edge in his deployment zone if it's captured an animal. The defender is not permitted to capture his own animals as he's too busy fighting off the invaders. There will be plenty of time after the battle to chase cows over the fields. So basically what you're doing here is you're trying to steal your opponent's food sources, basically. And again, 1 per each unit in the defender's army. So if you have a defender who is, or someone who's forced to play defender in this, and they have a ton of units in their army, naturally there's going to be more livestock out there to catch for the attacker. So there's good and bad to that, and as far as how your army is organized. So again, there may be more or less depending on how many units the defender actually has. So keep that in mind. And then the victory conditions. How do you actually win this thing then? So the attacker wins if he manages to capture at least half the animals and march them off a table edge in his deployment zone. The defender wins if he can stop the attacker from doing this. So pretty easy. So really, again, if you have a lot of units, that means certainly more work for the attacker. And so if you can start whittling attacking units down where it's going to be difficult for them to capture your livestock and then get them off the fields, that will definitely add some difficulty here. So the defender definitely has an easier job in a certain sense. They don't have to worry about capturing the animals or moving them anywhere. They're just around. And ideally, when you're deploying, you can put them in a little bit more difficult spots to where the opponent has to work a little bit harder to catch them. And again, the attacker definitely has a little bit more work here, so you have to move into the central area. Ideally, not lose too many models so you can actually capture one and then make your way back, all the while being harassed by enemy or defending units. So it's not all that easy necessarily for the attacker, but So what that's going to require is definitely a little bit more planning on the attacker's part. You definitely want to be a little bit more surgical and attack certain areas. Um, Remove enemy units if possible. Get them to flee. Get them out of the way. Ideally, you have some more let's say like less points intensive units, so more like skirmishers and stuff like that, who can then kind of follow up from the main combat oriented units. They can then go pick up the cattle and then start working their way back away, and leaving your combat units to deal with the defender's main units. So you certainly don't want to take your most expensive units, capture their cavalry, or not their cavalry, but their livestock, and then put yourself in a vulnerable position as you're retreating with their livestock, just to get yourself in bad positions. So yeah, lots of different things to consider here. And again, there might be some slight modifications depending on whether you're doing this just straight up in a campaign and maybe even more of a tournament setting, things like that. But the attacker does have some advantages too, in the fact that they can come in from two different table edges. So depending on, again, forces available and things like that, you can certainly put some pressure on the defender and try to outmaneuver them or get them into bad spots where it's a little bit easier to take away some of the defender's units, and then also get easier access to that livestock, and then getting it off onto your table edges. So again, you do have to get them back into your deployment zone table edges, essentially. Going basically back the way you came, not just any table edge, so something to consider there. But again, depending on the terrain you're using too, that can make for a little bit more interesting scenario. So certainly like just more than a bare field would be ideal for this. So again, something like a village to raid, a farm, something like that, with some buildings, fences, fields, even like enclosures for some of the animals. Again, you got to keep them 3 inches from each other, but beyond that, it should be pretty cool. So and it does show that you're essentially 18 inches away from, again, the deployment zone. From your the defender's deployment zone from the attacking zone, and then also 12 inches from the short sides of the tables there. So so a little bit different of a mission certainly than just the standard kill everybody list. So important to note, you don't get any points for destroying units or having units destroyed here. This is really just about getting as many of those units, livestock units, off the board to try and win, and the defender just has to try and prevent that from happening. So a key strategy there for the defender, you have to have at least 5 models to capture a livestock. So if the defender has a lot of like missile troops and stuff like that, where you just have to do enough to where an attacking unit can't carry off a piece of livestock. So if it looks like they have, and you can chase after them and just whittle the numbers down a little bit, forcing them to essentially drop or leave the livestock unit, you don't have to necessarily kill off or destroy an enemy force, the attacking force, down to the last person. So you just have to make it so that they can't really easily maneuver and get away with all of your livestock. So again, playing to the rules of the mission a little bit there. And certainly, like, if the attacker's getting a little bit greedy and they have a bigger unit that's carrying away 2, 3, 4 livestock, as you start whittling those numbers down, you can at least mitigate the number of livestock that they're stealing there, and hopefully keeping that under half of the total number, just to prevent them from winning again. And those are the win conditions. So nothing else relating to killing units whatsoever. So that has been the Livestock Raid. And we will be back in the next part here with Occupy Sacred Ground.